Sonny was about as old as the boys in his class. His face had been open and bright. There was a lot of copper in it, and he had wonderfully direct brown eyes with a great gentleness and privacy. He wondered what Sonny looked like now. Sonny had been picked up the evening before in a raid on an apartment downtown for peddling and using heroin. No, he couldn't believe it. What he meant by that was that he could find no place for it inside himself. He had kept it outside himself for so long, he didn't want to know. Well, he had suspicions, but he didn't name them. He kept putting them away. He told himself that Sonny was wild, but Sonny wasn't crazy. Sonny had never turned rude or evil or disrespectful. Sonny was always a good boy. He didn't want to believe that he'd ever see his brother going down, coming to nothing. All that light in his face gone out in the condition he had seen in so many others. Especially what happened to kids in Harlem so quick, so quick. But yet it had happened. And here he was talking about algebra to a lot of boys who might one day, for all he knew, anything, be popping off needles every time they went to the head. Perhaps it did more for them than algebra could.
They were filled with rage. All they really knew were two darknesses. The darkness of their lives, which now was closing in on them, and the darkness of the movies, which had blinded them to that other darkness, and in which they now vindictively dreamed at once, more together than at any other time, and more alone.
When the last bell rang, class ended. I let out my breath. It seemed I'd been holding it for all that time. My clothes were wet. I may have looked as though I'd been sitting in a steam bath, all dressed up, all afternoon. I was sitting in the classroom for a long time, listening to the boys outside, downstairs, shouting and cursing and laughing. Their laughter struck me perhaps for the first time.
It wasn't the joyous laughter, which God knows why one associates with children. It was mocking and insular. Its intent was to denigrate. It was disenchanted, and also in this lay the authority of their curses. Perhaps he was listening to them because he was thinking about his brother, and in
And even though he was a full-grown man, he still hung around that block. Still spent hours on the street corners and was always high and ragged. He'd run into him from time to time, and he'd always get around to asking him for a quarter or 50 cents. Always had some really good excuses, too. And he always gave it to him. But he didn't know why.
I see you got the papers, so you already know about it.
You mean about Sonny? Yes, I already know about it. How come they didn't keep you?
I wasn't there. I stay away from the people.
Do you? You mean you come all the way down here to tell me about Sonny?
That's right.
Well, thanks. But I already know about it. I got to get home.
Good night, sir. Good night, sir.
I'll walk you a little way. What are you going to do? I mean about time.
Look, I haven't seen Sonny in over a year. I'm not sure I'm going to do anything. Anyway, what the hell can I do?
That's right. Ain't nothing you can
The child knows the old folk won't talk anymore because if he knows too much about what's happened to them, he'll know too much too soon about what's going to happen to him.
The last time you saw your mother, remember? You were restless. You wanted to get out and see Isabel. Well, you weren't married yet, and you had a lot of things to straighten out between you. Sonny was out somewhere. Mama kept watching the streets. I don't know if I'll ever see you again after you go off from here, but I hope you'll remember the things I've tried to teach you.
Don't talk like that. You'll be here a long time yet. Mama, don't worry about nothing. I'll be writing all the time and you be getting the checks.
I want to talk to you about your brother. If anything happens to me, he ain't gonna have nobody to look out for him.
Mama, ain't nothing gonna happen to you or Sonny. Sonny's all right. He's a good boy. He's got good sense.
It ain't a question of his being a good boy, nor of his having good sense. It ain't only the bad ones, nor yet the dumb ones that get sucked under. Your daddy once had a brother. You didn't ever know that, did you?
Oh, never knew that.
Oh, yes. Your daddy had a brother. Now, I know you never saw your dad cry, but I did many a time in all these years.
What happened to his brother? How come nobody's ever talked about it?
His brother got killed when he was just a little younger than you are now. I knew it. He was a fine boy. He was maybe a little full of the devil, but he didn't need nobody no more. He used to have a job in the mill, and like all the young folks, he just liked to perform on Saturday nights. Saturday night, him and your father would drift around to different places, go to dances, things like that, or just sit around with people they knew. And your father's brother would sing. He had a fine voice, and play along with himself on his guitar. Now, this particular Saturday night, they were coming home from someplace. They were both a little drunk. And there was a moon that night. It was bright like day. Your father's brother was feeling kind of good, whistling to himself, and he had his guitar slung over his shoulder. They were coming down the hill, and beneath them was a road that turned off from the highway. Your father's brother, he always had a pistol, decided to run down this hill, and he did, with that guitar banging and clanging behind him, and he ran across the road, and he was making water behind a tree. Your father was sort of amused at it, still coming down the hill behind his son. Then he heard a car, and at that same minute, his brother stepped from behind the tree into the road in the moonlight, and he started across the road. And your father started to run down the hill. He said, "You don't know why. This car was full of white men, and they was all drunk. And when they seen your father's brother, they let out a great whoop and holler, and they aimed the car straight at him. They was having fun. They just wanted to scare him, the way they do sometimes, you know? Drunk. I guess the boy, being drunk too, scared, kind of lost his head. By the time he jumped, it was too late. Your father says he heard his brother scream when that car rolled over him. And he heard the wood of that guitar when he give, and he heard them strings go flying, and his wife had shouting, and the car just kept on a-going. And ain't stopped till this day. Time your father got down the hill, Just your daddy and his brother and that busted guitar. Oh, yes. Your daddy never did really get right here. Till the day he died, he weren't sure that every white man he saw was a man that killed his brother. Well, I ain't telling you all this to make you see, or bitter, or to make you hate nobody. I'm telling you this because you got a brother. And the world ain't changed. But I praise my Redeemer that he called your daddy home for me. I ain't saying it to throw the flowers at myself. I declare it keeps me from feeling too cast down to know I helped your father get safely through this world. Your father always acted like he was the roughest, strongest man on earth. Everybody took him to be like that. But if he hadn't had me there to see his tears,
Mama, I didn't know it was like that.
oh, honey, there's a lot to it, young man. You were going to find it out. You've got to hold on to your brother. And never let it fall. No matter what it looks like is happening to him, and no matter how evil you get with it, you're going to be evil with him many a time. But don't forget what I told you. Here?
I won't forget. Don't you worry, I won't forget. I won't let nothing happen to Sonny.
You may not be able to stop nothing from happening. But you got to let him know you're there.
2 days later, you were married and you were gone. You had a lot on your mind. You had pretty well forgotten about your promise to Mom. still not very good at it, and frankly, I don't know anybody who is. The silence of the next few days must have been louder than the sound of all the music ever played since time began. One morning before she went to work, Isabel was in his room for something, and she suddenly realized all his records were gone, and she knew for certain he was gone, and he was. He went as far as the Navy would carry him. He finally sent me a postcard from someplace in Greece, and that was the first I knew that Sonny was still alive. I didn't see him anymore until we were both back in New York, and the war had long been over.
He was a man by then, of course, but you weren't willing to see it. He came by the house from time to time, but you fought almost every time you met. You didn't like the way he carried himself, loose and dream-like all the time. And you didn't like his friends. And his music seemed to be merely an excuse for the life he led. It was just that weird and disordered. Then you had a fight. A pretty awful fight. And you didn't see Sonny for months. By and by, you looked him up when he was living in a furnished room in the village.
And I tried to make it up. But Sonny just lay on his bed, and he wouldn't come downstairs with me. And he treated these other people as though they were his family, and I wasn't. You might just as well be dead as living the way you're living.
Don't worry about me anymore in life. I am dead as far as you're concerned.
And he slammed the door behind me. I read about Sonny's troubles in the spring. Little Gracie died in the fall. She was a beautiful little girl, but she only lived a little over 2 years. She died of polio. She suffered. I think I may have written Sonny the very day little Gracie was buried. I was sitting in the living room in the dark, by myself, and I suddenly thought of Sonny. My trouble made his real. One Saturday afternoon when Sonny had been living with us, or anyway, been in our house for nearly 2 weeks, I found myself wandering aimlessly about drinking from a can of beer and trying to work up the courage to search Sonny's room. He was out. He was usually out when I was home, and Isabel had taken the children to see their grandparents. Suddenly, I was standing still in front of the living room window watching 7th Avenue. The idea of searching Sonny's room made me still. I scarcely dared to admit to myself what I was searching for. I didn't know what I'd do if I found it, or if I didn't. On the sidewalk across from me near the entrance to a barbecue joint, some people were holding an old-fashioned revival meeting. It was strange suddenly to watch, though I've been seeing these meetings all my life. So, of course, I had everybody else down there. Yet they paused and watched and listened. Soothe a poison out of them. At times seemed nearly to fall away from the sullen, belligerent, battered faces, as though they were fleeing back to their first condition while dreaming of their last. Then I saw Sonny standing at the edge of the crowd. He was carrying a wide, flat notebook with a green cover, and it made him look, from where I was standing, almost like a schoolboy. The coppery sun brought out the copper in his skin. He was very faintly smiling, standing very still. Then the singing stopped. The tambourine turned into a collection plate again. Sonny dropped some change in the plate, looking directly at the woman with a little smile. Then he started across the avenue towards the house. He has a slow, loping walk, something like the way Harlem Pitchers walk. Only he's imposed on his own habit. I never really noticed it before. I stayed at the window, both relieved and apprehensive. As Sonny disappeared from my sight, they began singing again, and they were still singing when his key turned in the lock.
yourself the way they play it. They didn't want something all the time. You can see that, well, that means something real for them. Of course, they want to too. You gotta see that. Even some that say they don't. So, now, what about you?
What about you? Do you want to?
Me, while I was downstairs before, on my way here, listening to that woman sing, it struck me all of a sudden how much suffering she must have had to go through. To sing like that. It's repulsive to think you have to suffer that much.
But there's no way not to suffer. And is there something?
I believe that. That's never stopped the woman from trying, though. Has it? No. There's no way not to suffer. But you try all kinds of ways to keep from drawing you. Keep on top of it. You can seem, well, like you. Like you did something all right. And now you're suffering for it. You know? Well, you know. Why do people suffer? Maybe it's better to do something to get a reason. In your reason.
But we just agreed that there's no way not to suffer. Isn't it better than just to take it?
But nobody just takes it. That's what I'm telling you. Everybody tries not to. You're just hungry on the way some people try. It's not your way.
That's not true. That's not true. I don't give a damn what other people do. I don't even care how they suffer. I just care how you suffer. Please believe me. I don't want to see you die trying not to suffer.
I won't die trying not to suffer. At least not any faster than anybody else.
But there's no need, is there, in killing yourself?
It's terrible sometimes. Inside. That's the trouble. We walk these streets, black and funky and cold, and there's not really living asphalt. Nothing shaking. You can't get it out. Storm is out. You can't talk it, you can't make love with it. And when you finally try to get with it and play it, you realize nobody's listening. So you gotta listen. You gotta find a way to listen. Sometimes you do anything like that. You can cut your mother's throat. Or your brothers. Or your own. Don't worry, I'm all right now. I think I'll feel all right. But I can't forget where I've been. I don't mean just the physical place I've been. I mean where I've been and what I've been.
What have you been, Sonny?
Been something I didn't recognize. Didn't know I could be. Didn't know anybody. I'm not talking about it now because I feel guilty or anything like that. Maybe it'd be better if I did. I don't know. Anyway. Can't really talk about it now. Not to you. Not to you. Sometimes, you know, and it was actually when I was almost out of the world, I felt that I was in it. That I was with it, you know? And I didn't play. Or I really didn't have to play. It just came out of me. It was there. And I don't know how I played thinking about it now, but I know I did terrible things those times. Sometimes. It wasn't that I did anything to them. It was that they weren't real. Another time, well, I needed a fix. I needed some place to lean. I needed a clear space to listen. And I couldn't find it, and I looked crazy. I did terrible things to me. I was terrible for me. Oh, well. I could never tell you. I was all by myself at the bottom of something stinking and sweating and crying and shaking. And I smelled it, you know? Mine stink. And I thought I died if I couldn't get away from it. And yet all the same, I knew that everything I was doing would just lock me in with it. I didn't know it. I didn't know it. Still don't know. Something kept telling me that maybe it was good to smell your own stink. But I didn't think that that was wonder does it look a whole lot more fun.
We went to the only nightclub on a short, dark street downtown. And we squeezed through the narrow, shadowy, jam-packed bar to the entrance of the big room where the bandstand was. And we stood there for a while. For the light was very dim in this room, and we couldn't see.
Oh boy, I've been waiting for you, Creole. This is my brother I told you about.
Pleased to meet you, son. You got a real musician in your family, man.
Well, now I heard it all.
And it turned out that everyone at the bar knew Sonny, or almost everyone. Some were musicians working there or nearby, or not working. Some were simply hangers-on. And some were there to hear Sonny play. I was introduced to all of them, and they were all very polite to me. Yet it was clear, for them, I was only Sonny's brother. Here in Sonny's world, or rather his kingdom, here it wasn't even a question that his veins bore royal blood. All I know about music is not many people ever really hear it. And even then, on the rare occasions when something opens within and the music enters, what we mainly hear are personal, vanishing evocations. But the man who creates the music is hearing something else, is dealing with that roar rising from the void and imposing order on it as it hits the air. I just watched Sonny's face. His face was troubled. He was working hard, but he wasn't with it. And I had the feeling that in a way, everyone on the bandstand was waiting for him, both waiting and pushing him along. But as I began to watch Creole, I realized it was Creole who held them all back. He had them on a short rein, but he was listening to Sonny. He was having a dialogue with Sonny. He was waiting for Sonny to leave the shoreline and strike out for the deep water. He wanted Sonny to do the things on the keys which would let Creole know that Sonny was in the water. I had never before thought of how awful the relationship must be between the musician and his instrument. He has to fill it, this instrument, with the breath of life, his own. He has to make it do what he wants it to do. And a piano is just a piano. It is made out of so much wood and wires and little hammers and big ones and ivory. Well, there's only so much you can do with it. The only way to find this out is to try. To try and make it do everything.
Then Creole stepped forward to remind them what they were playing were the blues. He struck something in all of them. The music tightened, deepened. Apprehension began to hit the air. And then Creole began to tell us what the blues were all about. The blues weren't about anything very new. He and his boys up there were keeping it new at the risk of ruin, destruction, madness, even death, in order to find new ways to make us listen. For the tale of how we may suffer, how we delight, how we may triumph is never new. It must always be heard. It's the only tale worth telling. It's the only light in all this darkness. For this tale, according to that face, that body, those strong hands on those strings, has a new aspect in every country, a new dignity in every generation. Listen, Creole seem to be saying, listen, listen. Now, these are Sonny's blues. And he very slowly stepped backwards, filling the air with the immense suggestion that Sonny speak for himself.
And Sonny went all the way back. He really began with the spare, flat statement of the opening phrase of the song, and then he began to make it his. And it was very beautiful, because it
and I asked her to take drinks to the bandstand. There was a long pause while they talked up there in the indigo light. And after a while, I saw the girl put a scotch and milk on top of the piano for Sonny. He didn't seem to notice it at first, but just before they began to play again, he sipped from it and looked toward me. Then he put it back on top of the piano. For me, as they began to play again, it glowed and shook above my brother's head like the very cup of trembling.
Cup of trembling.
Trembling.